Good morning. Good morning. October 7th, 2011 was a beautiful day throughout most of the United States of America. It was an early fall day. It was warm, beautiful sunshine. If you look at the satellite map all throughout the United States, it was an absolutely gorgeous day, an early fall day. The humidity was down, etc. I was on what at that point was flight number 15 from Indianapolis to Atlanta, Georgia, as part of my weekly round-trip fare back and forth between Indianapolis and Atlanta. And an airport abbreviation, in all due respect to our former CFO of the Airport Association, which I thank you, by the way, it is labeled on my boarding pass as IND to ATL. At that day, I had Zone 4 of boarding, which I always seem to get Zone 4. I don't care how many frequent flyer organizations I join, I'm always in Zone 4. But I was on Zone 4 that day. Also that day, if you look in the history books, my two beloved and favorite athletic teams, the Chicago Cubs, were 71 games, and lost 91 games. They were in 5th place. My other favorite team in the entire world, the Indiana University Football Fighting Hoosiers. I inserted fighting for a reason. They were 1-5. Soon to be, that lone victory was all they would get that year. As I settled into my seat, which on that day was 31B, and if you fly a lot, you know what I'm talking about, on a 3-wide, an MD-88. I've flown a lot of MD-88s over the last year. And that's the seat in the middle, which is a little uncomfortable because you'd rather have the aisle and you'd rather have, or the window side. But in that particular day, and on that particular moment, it was an incredible experience because I was exhausted. There was not 1 ounce in my body that was left and shredded with fatigue. Every muscle fiber in my body was absolutely as tense as could be. Rewind back many years ago when my first son, Drew Ruckelshaus, was born. And for any of you that know me, and there's a few of you here today, and I appreciate that, by the way, for anyone that came, you all know that I have pretty bad eyesight. Matter of fact, all Ruckelshauses have pretty bad eyesight. I was born with congenital glaucoma, so therefore my first son, we were on edge. Drew Ruckelshaus was born with congenital glaucoma. So from age 3 weeks until we were able to arrest it, we were on this routine with Drew. 3 weeks old, mind you. For the mothers here today, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. On Monday night, from midnight until Tuesday morning, nothing. No food, nor formula, no drink. Surgery in the morning, rest on Wednesday. We did one eye on Tuesday, and we did the other eye on Thursday. So we repeated that process. Again, for an infant, 3 weeks old, nothing to eat or drink from midnight on. It took 21 surgeries to arrest Drew's glaucoma. His eyesight today is pretty good. It really is. Then Maggie was born, my favorite daughter, and only daughter I might add. She was born. The exact same thing, congenital glaucoma. 2 strikes. Feel like a Cubs fan all over again, aren't I? Same situation. We started out about 4 weeks. We waited just 1 week later. We went through the same procedures. Wait 24 hours, have the surgery, and have both surgeries. But Maggie, after 22 surgeries, turned out fine. Her vision's just a little bit less than Drew, because if you know anything about glaucoma, it affects the optic nerve, which does affect the vision down the road long term. But Maggie's okay now. Then we have our life back together. We're moving forward. We're in the lumber business. I'm in the legislature. Things are just really swimming. And as we mentioned before, adversity happened in redistricting. I lost my seat, and I ran for the state senate in a race that I was up 10 points. 10 points going into the election, and I lost by 9. But that's life. Soon after that, there was a reckoning for that, because what happened 2 years later, my oldest son, Drew, who I told you about, a fantastic young man, was then stricken with leukemia. So we had the glaucoma, and then we had leukemia with Drew. And I'll never forget that. The doctors told us when they first diagnosed Drew, was stricken with leukemia, you're going to go through 6 months of hell. And they did not shortchange us on that. Drew went through that process. But during that process, one of my customers at the time was a gentleman by the name of David Craig, who was then the trainer for the Indiana Pacers. David had just lost his wife to breast cancer and took my son under his wing because of Drew, having cancer and David having just lost his wife. So Drew was a ball boy with the Indiana Pacers during this incredible run, which, by the way, today we still enjoy Drew's stories about Slick Leonard. He has the greatest Slick Leonard stories I think I've ever heard. But something good always will happen. To this day, and as was mentioned in the intro, Drew has gone on and he graduated from the University of Idaho in athletic training. So Drew someday, we hope, will be in the NBA. But right now, more importantly, he has a full-time job, read it off my payroll, at Miami of Ohio University. And he's coming home this afternoon just to see us and spend some time with us. Fast forward, my youngest son, Jay Ruckelshaus, who possesses all of his mother's genes, and Kathy Keys over there from Cathedral High School. He is a true product of you. He is a true product of you and your blessings and your teachings. He is the golden child. Jay is an incredible individual, starting out at 6'4" and very athletic, which is not resembling of a typical Ruckelshaus, but he is very athletic and possessed a mind that was incredible. He missed one on his SAT scores. One question. He applied to Harvard, Yale, Indiana University, and multiple other individual schools. He received the Wells Scholarship from Indiana University. My wife and I are both IU graduates. How do you turn that down? I just kept saying, Jay, press enter now. No, Dad, let's wait. Let's see what's going to happen. Then, on a Saturday morning in early January, he received a call from Harvard University. Harvard called him. We want you. Here's admittance. They only make 100 phone calls in the world to give early admittance. How do you turn down Harvard? Okay. A week later, Yale called. Same thing. Yale called him. They only make less than 100 phone calls. Finally, he went to Duke University, fell in love with it, interviewed, and got, which really is a very prestigious, it's a forerunner to the Wells Scholarship at Indiana University. It's called the A.B. Duke Scholarship, which is a full ride and access to 2 years semesters overseas in studies. Jay admitted, he was admitted and he wanted to do that. Tragically, maybe, later, a year ago last week, Jay was at Geist Reservoir, and unbeknownst to him, the depth of the lake, he dove in, and it was less than 3 feet deep, and he broke his neck. He's paralyzed from his chest down. Everything had shattered. So you could imagine, as I'm flying back and forth to Atlanta at the Shepherd Center, which is just a handful of specialty centers in the United States of America that deal with spinal cord patients. Spinal cord patient injuries are devastating. They change your lives. They change your family. Your whole family is injured. So as my wife and I are going through this, and I'm really feeling for my wife at this point, because I have found out there is Mother Teresa and there's Mary Ruckelshaus. But what I really found out is now there's Mary Ruckelshaus and there's Mother Teresa. She's amazing in what she's been able to do. But how can she go through this? How can you go through having 2 children with glaucoma, an aggregate of about 42 to 43 surgeries, have a son survive leukemia, a husband lose an election, although I'm not sure if she voted for me, by the way. Guess he might not. But go through that. How do you do that? So you can only imagine as a plane landed, my habitual habit is about 7:15, 7:20 in the evening. And if anybody knows anything about the Atlanta airport, is you go and I take the MARTA. I take the MARTA to Buckhead because the Shepherd Center was in Buckhead. So I have my little MARTA pass, I swipe it, you go up onto the train platform. And one of the things that I really love to do on the train platform at MARTA while I'm waiting for the train to go, if you stand up there on that platform, if you look to your right, you could see both runways. And you could see the trail of plane lights that are coming in, one after the other. That's an amazing sight. Atlanta International, Hartsfield International Airport, I might add, is the busiest airport in the United States. Hopefully I'm correct in that. Huge airport. That day, somehow, some way, something told me to look to my left. Excuse me. To my left. Over to my left was the most incredible sunset I have ever seen in my life. The greens, the blues, the hues, the yellows, the oranges were just the most blazing, incredible, and those that know me know my eyesight's horrible, so this is really good. And at that point, I started crying. I absolutely lost it. Every fiber, every bone, every muscle became limp. And there's about 10 guys slowly backing away from me, leaving this nut job to himself up there on that platform. But what happened to me after that was the most incredible feeling I've ever had in my life. At that point, at that instant, on October 7th, 2011, I realized we're going to make it. And not only are we going to make it, and this child is going to recover, but he's going to have an incredible life. And just like the other children, and just like the other instances that happened, he's going to thrive. He's going to take off. We're going to beat this thing. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know where, but I just know. When I got back and I returned to Indianapolis, Ann Ryder, for some of those that saw that piece that Ann Ryder did on Jay a year ago, and Ann and I become pretty close, I said, Ann, and Ann has interviewed Mother Teresa. So I figured Ann knows a little bit about these things. And I said, and I described the situation to Ann about what happened. And Ann's reaction to me was, you experienced the holy instant. The holy instant. Now, how do you survive? How do you get through life? And that's the talk or the thesis behind this presentation today in this discussion. How do you get through the issues that happen? If you lose a job, if you lose a loved one, if a loved one in your family is going through crisis, you're going through crisis, could be financial, could be anything. You could be a Chicago Cubs fan like I am. There's crisis all the time. How do you get through this? Well, one of the things I want to share with you, some of the things that have gotten my wife and I through this. The first thing that I really, really believe in to my core is don't take yourself so seriously in life. You know, we're all hustle and bustle. We're all trying to march through and break through every door and every ceiling that's out there. Don't take yourself so seriously because it will help. A great example of that is, we talked about in the introduction, Mitch Daniels. I've known Mitch Daniels forever. Our family's known Mitch Daniels. One of the greatest experiences of my life was to be able to work for Mitch Daniels in the administration. When I was out of work for the third time, I've been out of work 3 times, so those of you that were up there today searching for a job, I don't want to use Bill Clinton. I feel your pain because, brother, I've been there. Brother and sister, I've been there. I know exactly what you're going through. Okay? So Mitch Daniels, when I'm going to talk to Mitch, and I say, well, Governor, I said, I really would like to get back in public service. I really would like to help out, et cetera, et cetera. And Mitch Daniels looked at me and he said, well, what are you doing right now? And I said, well, Governor, actually, I'm on unemployment here, and I'm unemployed. Perfect. Why don't you go help run Department of Workforce Development and run the unemployment system because you're qualified. That's exactly what happened with Mitch Daniels. Don't take yourself so seriously. The other thing is, be with others. Be around others. Especially for those of you that are without jobs right now and you're networking and you're going through this whole process. Let me tell you one of the things that I learned. As you know, it's a lonely, lonely road. As a matter of fact, it's probably the most excruciating. There's never a time that you'll go through that you'll never have more self-doubt in yourself than that process right there. Well, one of the things that I learned is be with others. Be around others. Yes, you got to work out of your house. You don't have the money. You don't have an office space, whatever. But here's one of the tricks that I did. A very good friend of mine, who was a customer of mine, actually let me have a back office. Now, I took the staff out for lunch every now and then. It was a small staff. It was only 2 guys. So we would go out for lunch and coffee every now and then, and I would work and do all my connections and set up all my appointments out of there. The whole point was I was able to be back in an office environment, back with others, back in a routine, which helped me. And I might add, of all the 3 times that I was out of work, that was the shortest period, and I was able to gain the most success the quickest by going that route. The next tidbit, exercise. Okay, we've all heard that. We've read the books. We've seen the Today Show. That's okay, that's old hat. Rick, where are you? Rick is in here. If you look at my physique, you would say, okay, you're kidding me. There's no way you exercise. Well, Rick's my locker mate over there at Lifetime Sports Fitness, so I have testimony over there, Rick, and Rick's probably going to run out the door as soon as this is out of here because he doesn't testify anything on my behalf. But that's the most important part, exercise. It's amazing when you exercise how you can get your body to relax, and then your mind coincidentally after that can go with it from there. The other thing is humor. You have to use humor, and I really, really believe this, because as difficult as things can be in life, and man, they can be difficult as we all know, there's something humorous in absolutely everything. An example of this, and it's almost morbid even saying this, but it's a good story, is after Jay was injured, we were at the Methodist Hospital, and we were on the 5th floor, which is a trauma center. Dr. Skinner, who's a trauma doctor, he is a gentleman, a doctor from Louisville, Kentucky, so he had real short crop hair, and he was just very smooth in his manners and his demeanor. The interesting thing about him, here's a doctor who is making life and death decisions every day. As a matter of fact, when we were leaving, the 48 hours before we left to Atlanta, because Jay was at Methodist for 30 days, the state fair victims were coming in. We found out days later that he had to make the call with family consultation on 2 of the victims to end their lives. This is a guy making incredible decisions. So at any rate, we were talking to him early on in the crisis, and as I was talking to him, my wife and I asked him, hey, is there any psychological counseling available here at Methodist? Here's a guy who's going to go to Duke University, has all the scholarships in the world, high achiever, and he goes through this process. How devastating can that be? Take all the wind out of your sails. And I asked him, and the doctor said, sure, there's available. Well, being the smart, loose, smart aleck that I am, etc., I said, well, doc, what about me? Why don't we try on me? What do you think? And he looked at me and he just gave me sort of a little sheepish grin. He says, well, we could do that, but I'm afraid you'd use up all your benefits. And I said, doc, that's pretty good. I represent the cable industry. We might get you a show, a reality TV show. So you have to use that. The next thing, which is really, really, really important, somebody, no matter how difficult it is, and even in our condition, somebody, somewhere, has it more difficult than you. Okay? Remember that. It puts you in your situation in perspective. As an example, I talked about Drew in his leukemia. Drew is on the 5th floor. 5th floor is where we always end up. 5th floor at Riley Children's Hospital. That's the cancer patient wing at that time, back in the early 90s. There was a boy I'll never forget who was a little bit older than Drew, and this was really going to show my age, and he was playing Nintendo, and he was right next to us. Nice guy. I remember going in and talking to him quite a bit when Drew was up there. And one day I walked by as Drew was getting ready to vacate, and the bed was all clean, it was all nice and tidy, and I grabbed the nurse and I thought, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to that guy, and he just seemed like a really good guy, and I just want to say goodbye. And she just looked and lowered her head and said, he passed away. Again, no matter how difficult you have it, there is somebody always in a more difficult situation than you. The next part is keep your eye on the big picture. Okay? It's really easy, especially when you go through these crises, whether you're out of job or your loved ones are ill or you're ill, to get in the weeds, to get tangled up in all the minutiae about medicines, about this and about that. You need to keep your eye on the big picture. An example of that is down at the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, where Jay has been going through therapy. There's a gentleman who broke his neck, injured, University of Georgia baseball player. Broke his neck the exact same position where Jay is. And I watched him go through his therapy. He was injured about 6 months before Jay, and he was much more advanced than Jay. And I could see where the therapy was taking him. I could see where he was going with his therapy. And I talked to him quite a bit, and I could see where this is all going. So as we're in the minutia about, okay, Jay, can you do this? Can you do that? This gentleman's ahead, and it puts it all into perspective. A postscript. Some of you are going to ask, in the interest of time, Jay, right now, we have, so you know, we just returned from Atlanta, Georgia, as in Tuesday morning at 4:30 in the morning. Jay has finished up all of his therapy in Atlanta, Georgia. He currently is still paralyzed from the chest down. He has very good range of motion and use of his right arm. He cannot grasp, but he can turn back and forth. His left arm is about 60% of his right arm. He has pockets of sensation below the level of injury, which is fantastic because you have to have pockets of you have to have sensation before you have motor skills. This is a therapy that will take years. But the most important part about all this is that we went from Atlanta, Georgia, my wife Jay and I did, and we went to Duke University and had meetings with the university. This fall, Jay will enroll and he will start at Duke University. He will start his career and he'll start all over. The whole point of today is to give you some tidbits and some information as you go through your life to think about. Don't take yourself so seriously. Use humor. Exercise. Be with others. Somebody always has it more difficult than you. Never, ever, ever, yeah, I'm a Cubs fan, ever give up. Because one of these days, as you go through life, and as difficult as it may be, you, I am convinced, will find your holy instant. And you don't know what it's going to be. It may be a sunset. It may be a stranger. You just don't know. But you will find your holy instant, and you will be much better for it. Thank you all very much.